Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, any day. Oh, that was big. I'm excited. We're here again.
Oh my God.
So you will have been back at school about a week now, right? Some of you, and for some things. So we've been praying for that, and we'll keep praying for you. No matter what days you're in, we'll be praying for you every day. And we hope that it's going okay.
Yep. Just for announcement for this week, SU have their online equip happening 7 o'clock on Friday. I'm not sure what they're speaking on yet, but keep an eye out on the social medias, 7 till 8:45. So ask me if you want to register and I'll give you the details.
Awesome. And if you guys are looking for something to pray for at the moment, the vacancy committee, if you're watching this service on Sunday morning, has been finalised. So they are now officially looking for someone to fill the role that Mark had left. So please be praying for that, pray for the team, and for, just for wisdom that they'll be able to find the person that God has appointed for this role. Now today we have got Eilidh, who is talking on the passage on do not build your house on the sand. Have I butchered the
Building her.
Should you build it?
Build it on the rock. Close enough. But before that, we have got Natalie Treon for today. So let's welcome her in.
Woo!
And here's Natalie. She's below me on the screen.
Nice,
How are you this morning?
I'm well, thank you.
Glad to hear it. So, to kick us off in similar fashion to the last few weeks, what would you have for your last meal on earth?
So I wanted to clarify, before I answered this, do I just have one course or can I have like a main and a pudding?
Yeah, go for main. Go for
Yeah.
Okay,
because otherwise it would be quite difficult. So I think for main I would just go for a steak probably. Some nice pepper sauce and chunky chips.
How would you have your steak done?
So I quite like it medium. Not too red. Yeah. And then pudding, much harder to decide and kind of depends on what I'm in the mood for, but probably something chocolatey of some sort.
Yeah. What about
not too fussy if it's chocolate.
Would you have a Fanta as well? A nice Fanta.
Fanta? No, I probably wouldn't, in all honesty.
That's fine.
Karen trying to slide that in there, the Fanta advocate.
I love Fanta. It's my favourite.
Fanta's a good shout. Lemon Fanta on holiday.
Oh, lemon, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, Natalie, how might the youth know you, or where might they have seen you before?
So they might have seen me around church in the morning services, maybe singing either with Dave Harrison's band or with Ewan's band, or maybe up at the front connected with the World Mission Hub. Those would probably be the times they might have seen me.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about World Mission Hub being up on the front with the bands. In what ways, maybe perhaps expanding on those, or if there are any others, in what ways do you serve in church and in your life?
So those are probably two of the main ways I serve in church. That I guess that are up front. I also have a house group which has kind of gone online at the moment, but I kind of help to coordinate that, and that's with a group of I guess other mums really, women who are kind of round about my age. We've all most of us got young kids, and that grew out of the Bible experience that we did a couple of years back, it's kept going since then, which has been really good. So I do that too. Those are probably the main things that I do.
Cool.
Awesome.
So what is World Mission Hub? What do you do on that? Expand a bit more. I feel like I need to know more.
Yeah. So I guess the World Mission Hub is responsible for the the support and a bit of the pastoral care of our mission partners. So we've got around about 8 partners with KBC, of people who are out in other bits of the world. A few of them here at home in the UK, but most of them in places like Africa or South America. And we link with them, keep in touch with them, support them through prayer and financially as well as a church. And so the hub is sort of a point of contact for them and for all of that support. And we're also then involved in the church in kind of promoting world missions, so kind of keeping people aware as well as what our partners are doing, but just opportunities in terms of world mission and trying to get people interested and maybe involved if they feel that that's something they'd like to do.
That's amazing that I feel like there's so many different aspects to that. It's just, it must be such a good thing to be involved in, definitely. So in these different ways, your World Mission Hubs, serving in the band and things, what why do you do it? Why do you serve in those ways, and what do you enjoy about it?
So I guess because I enjoy those things is why I've kind of ended up doing some of them. So I enjoy music, and I've attempted to play a few instruments in my lifetime, but I've basically lost all those skills. But singing is easy to pick up anytime, and so that was probably what led me down the singing route rather than any other instrument. But I mean, I just enjoy singing in church anyway, and then approached Ewan about getting involved a bit more in the bands, and so so that was because I enjoyed doing it and I kind of sought it out a little bit, and it's a wee bit similar with the World Mission Hub. So I did what was called the network course, which is run I don't know if it's every year, maybe every couple of years at the church, and it's just all about finding out a bit more about your gifts and what your passions are. And out of that, I sort of realized that one of my passions is world mission, and that came from back when I finished school. I went and did a gap year with an organisation called Oasis Trust, and I spent 6 months in Zimbabwe and a month in Mozambique, and like just from that I've kind of developed a real love for world mission, and it's still a passion of mine, although I don't get to do it specifically at the moment, but I still have that sort of interest and passion for it. And so again, just at the time it was Gary Bruff who was leading the World Mission Hub, and so I spoke to him about getting a bit more involved with that, and it kind of went from there.
Amazing. I'm actually just going to plug the network course because I think all of us have done it. I don't know. Yeah, I think most of us have done it. So it's just amazing to figure out actually what it is that you're passionate about. So if any of the youth are watching this and want to kind of figure out what it is that they're passionate about, what God's gifts are for them, then give us a wee like or a wee message and things, because it would be good to get you involved in that, definitely. Yeah, cool. So apart from all of these amazing things that you do, Natalie, what is it that you work as? What do you do on a daily basis? What's your job?
Yeah, so I'm also a doctor, and I work as an anaesthetist. So in very basic terms, that's my job is to look after you whilst if you're coming for an operation, and if you go off to sleep for an operation, then I'm the person that gets you to sleep and looks after you through the surgery while you're getting an operation.
Nice. Love it. So it sounds intense. But
I love it, but yeah, not for everyone, I suppose. But
I can't tell if I would be scared in that situation or not.
Yeah,
I think it's hard. I think most people are pretty nervous when they come, and that's one of the things I quite like about the job is kind of helping people feel less nervous and putting them at ease a little bit before they go off to sleep, because it is a bit scary just letting someone else take control completely, and lots of people don't really like it and feel quite anxious about it. So
yeah. Oh, scary. So how has lockdown affected what you do?
Through work, do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in some ways it's not changed stuff very much at all. So I can't work from home. So all through any of the lockdowns, I've continued to go to work every day, which a lot of people haven't been able to do. And in some ways, that's been a real blessing to have that sort of bit of routine and life still a little bit normal. Work in itself has changed a lot, and just the way that we do things, lots of different procedures and things like, well, you've seen on the news, wearing sort of different masks and PPE is something nobody had ever heard of before, and now everybody knows what we're talking about. So that's all changed a lot, and as well as looking after people when they're having operations, anaesthetists also work in intensive care, and so a lot of us have been needed there a bit more than we would have normally, to look after kind of really sick folk in intensive care. So it's changed a little bit in what I do day to day, but just in kind of, I guess, in chunks of time. So back at the start, they needed lots of help in intensive care, so I was doing more of that and less work in theatre, and then again more recently, but it chops and changes a lot of the time. So
yeah, I guess coming off the back of that, how can we be praying for you as the youth and the team?
So I think probably right now it's just perseverance, I suppose, to keep going. I think a lot of people working in the hospital anyway have noticed the difference between lockdown the first time and then more recently, and just the kind of I guess the feelings towards healthcare workers and things. So there's loads and loads of support at the start, and NHS heroes and all that stuff, and which I wasn't massively keen on anyway. But there's less of that this time around, and it feels a bit more like hard work now, and it's because it's gone on. I mean, everybody's struggled in different ways, but it's just gone on so long, and everyone's a bit weary. So I think prayer for strength to just persevere through it, and also for me just to try and be a witness in what I do, and where there's opportunities to speak about faith and things, to just take those opportunities.
Yeah, we will absolutely pray for you for that, and everyone you work with as well, obviously, the whole thing, and hopefully the youth will as well. So is there a Bible verse that's kind of been encouraging you or getting you through, or even just a favourite one?
Yeah, so there's one over the last probably the last year really, in Philippians 4, and it's verses 8 and 9, and I'll just read it here. It says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." It's just verse 8 actually, and I think over the last few months I've just been kind of aware of just what I'm thinking about and how that affects so much of how we feel and then what we do, and listen to a great sermon series from Saddleback Church, Rick Warren, about thinking about what you think about, we can, and I do it myself, you can have so many negative thoughts and worry about what people think about you, and that can really get you down, and then actually just affects how you behave and how you feel overall about things, and also what you're putting into your mind. So again, when it came to work and the first time around, there was a lot of kind of drive about sort of well-being at work, and thinking about what you're taking in terms of, it was things like reading the news, listening to the news, conversations at work, how you focus your conversations, and where there was lots of anxiety and negativity going around, to try and kind of temper that a little bit, and controlling your WhatsApp groups and how your notifications come in, and just getting a balance of things so that you weren't completely overwhelmed. And so, yeah, that verse I just loved, especially the first bit, just whatever is true, to think about what is true, you know. So if you have a thought that's negative, or you feel like someone is feeling negatively towards you or judging you in some way, you know, just think, you know, is this thought that I'm having, is this true? Is this actually really what's going on? Is this myself kind of, you know, making it up, or telling yourself this is what's going on when really that's not true? And yeah, just gaining some balance through that, and being aware of how that affects you and your life. And it's just really great kind of practical advice from the Bible, which is always, you know, it's always what it gives us, is just advice for life, isn't it? So yeah, so that has really helped me if I've been feeling kind of tired and down and things get to me. I kind of come back to that verse, and it encourages me.
Yeah, that's great. So the final question I had was going to be, do you have any advice? Would that be your advice, or do you
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all kind of all combined together. Is just to be aware of what you're putting into your mind, to try and make it as God focused as you can. That's what I tried to do over the last year, when stuff's been difficult, is just to, you know, if I'm listening to music, try and listen to Christian music. If I'm listening to radio, the same. I've tried to, like, got audiobooks in my car for commuting to work, and so I've tried to like listen to sort of Christian books, and for the first time listened to Chasing the Dragon. I don't know if any of you guys have read it, and I'm on the Cross and the Switchblade now, and they're just like awesome books of these kind of pioneering missions that are really encouraging. So yeah, just like taking in God-centered stuff, rather than what the world's feeding us all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, good point. On the KBC Youth Instagram, plug again, every Monday we post at Media Mondays, where we try and post like a podcast or a song or YouTube videos or a book or something that are easily accessible, and people can just go on and find all these different Christian things. Yeah, so good point.
Yeah.
Go and look on KBC Youth. Yeah, thank you so much. That felt very wise, very informative. Yeah, thank you very much for coming to speak.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And hopefully see you soon in the church, definitely.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Natalie, we'll see you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Today we're looking at the last section of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7 verses 21 to 29. It's where Jesus gives the metaphor about building our house on the rock instead of the sand. You might have heard the well-known kids song about this passage. I know it's ingrained in my brain, but what does that actually mean? Let's read the passage and look a little closer at what it means. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority, and not as their teachers of the law. So here Jesus is rounding up everything that he has shared in the Sermon on the Mount, with instructions on how to apply it to our lives. He basically boils it down to two choices between obedience and disobedience, and calls us to fully commit our lives to his teaching.
He does this by warning us of two ways on how not to live our lives. In verses 21 to 23, he tells us not to be people who talk the talk without walking the walk. And in verses 24 to 27, he tells us not to ignore what he has taught us. Let's look further into what this means. Firstly, in verses 21 to 23, here Jesus describes people who say a lot about the Christian faith and their beliefs, yet they don't follow through and practice what they preach. Jesus says, "Not everyone who says to me," in verse 21. And in verse 22 he says, "Many will say to me." But what he is discussing is that no matter what we say in faith, we have to actively do what we say. Only the one who does the will of the Father will enter the kingdom of heaven, in verse 21. In order to be saved, we have to confess with our lips, believe in our hearts, and carry out the will of God. And a true profession of our faith in Jesus as Lord is impossible without the Holy Spirit. Now, when people do proclaim that they have prophesied, cast out demons, or performed miracles in the name of Jesus, like it says in verse 22, these things are good and can be true because we know that Jesus says great signs and wonders will be performed in this world. There's nothing wrong with someone who is proclaiming this. It's only wrong when it's all talk without truth. Jesus says in verse 23 that anyone who does anything in his name without building a relationship with him, he will say to them, "I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers." He says this because they have spent so much time talking about their faith and doing things out of performance instead of spending time with Jesus, growing in relationship with him and knowing him. This is why he says, "I never knew you." Without a relationship with Jesus, we are doing things out of performance, for our own personal gain, to show off, and this is not what Jesus wants. People may call Jesus Lord, Lord, like it says in verse 21, yet they never submit to his lordship or obey the will of God. Anyone who claims to do mighty works in their ministry, yet their everyday behaviour in their work they do is not good, Jesus says they are evildoers in verse 23. Jesus is asking us to build our relationship with him in order to continually live out our lives doing good works of obedience in his name. Moving on to the more familiar section in verses 24 to 27, here Jesus says there is the person who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice in verse 24, and the person who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice in verse 26. Jesus is talking about practice. He is showing the contrast between performance for Jesus and practice of Jesus' words. He wants us to practice his words, but not perform for personal gain. We must practice Jesus' teaching in our lives, but again, we can only do this when we're in relationship with him. Jesus uses the well-known builder's metaphor to show the contrast between those who are obedient and disobedient to his word. The wise man who dug deep and constructed his house on the rock, and the fool who couldn't be bothered with foundations and was happy to build his house on the sand. If someone were to walk past these two men, they wouldn't notice the difference between the two houses because the difference was in the foundations. Only when the storm broke and battered both the houses with great force, like we read in verses 25 and 27, did the fundamental difference reveal itself. The house on the rock was able to stand firm, yet the house on the sand collapsed into complete ruin. This metaphor is used to show the difference between genuine and false Christians. On the surface, you can't easily tell which is which. Both appear to be building Christian lives and hear the words of Jesus, going to church, listening to sermons, praying and reading their Bible. Yet only the genuine Christian, the one who built their house on the rock with a solid foundation, will hear Christ's teaching, build their relationship with him and put it into practice. We are shown that only a storm will reveal the truth, and that day of judgment will come to all. It's good to proclaim our faith in Jesus and listen to what Jesus is teaching us, but we must act and put these things into practice, being obedient to God. Of course, this is not to say that to enter the kingdom of heaven, all we have to do is good works of obedience. No, it's only by the grace of God through faith that we're saved. However, what Jesus is stressing is that those who truly hear the gospel and profess their faith will always obey him, continually expressing their faith and doing good works. Repeatedly throughout the Sermon on the Mount, we have heard his call to be different than everyone else. Instead of conforming to this world, we are called by Jesus to imitate our Heavenly Father, to be truthful and do good works for him instead of blending into the crowd. Jesus concludes the Sermon on the Mount by showing us that we have a choice, to be obedient or disobedient to his calling for us. This choice is probably one of the most important for us to make. One leads to life and security in the kingdom of heaven, whereas the other leads to destruction and disaster. In verses 28 and 29, we are told that the crowds were amazed and saw that Jesus taught as one who had authority. He practiced what he preached, and he was living out what he was preaching. At the beginning of the following chapter, we are told that large crowds followed Jesus down the mountainside. So we see that people chose to follow him and his way. And that's my hope for all of the youth at KBC, that you will choose to put Jesus' words into practice in relationship with him, following his way and teaching. I pray that you will put his words into practice, but not out of performance. Which path will you decide to take? On which foundation will you build your house?